Hi, Raven. I've been a long-time listener to your stories, but I've never submitted any stories myself, although I've experienced some unexplainable events throughout my life. The point is, I'm not a good writer, but also very self-critical, so I know it's going to take me some time to write this story. Let me start by saying that I'm a 30-year-old woman from the Netherlands, and so my first language is Dutch. Therefore, I'm not a native English speaker, but I'll try my best to write this story as understandable as possible. I'm certain you're going to do just fine. So let's go on to the story. This story happened about 31 years ago in 1994, when my mom was pregnant with me. At this point, my mom, my dad, and my brother were a family of 3, and my brother had just turned 2 years old. They had 2 dogs, which were still around when I was born and lived for quite a few years during my early childhood, and a goldfish. I promise the goldfish will be important to this story. My mom worked part-time so that she could take care of my brother as many hours of the day as possible. The hours my mom was at work, my grandmother babysat my brother, but on occasion he went to daycare for a few hours. The day in which the story took place was one of those occasions. My mom came back from work and she noticed that she still had some time left before she had to pick up my brother from daycare. She decided to do some ironing in the meantime, when she noticed that the goldfish suddenly had black spots all over its body. She thought this was strange since the fish was perfectly fine when she fed him before going to work that morning. She brushed it off for the moment and planned on discussing it with my dad when he would get home from work later that day. My mom then went on to go upstairs to get the laundry out of the dryer and iron it. While she was ironing the clothing, she started having this feeling of someone standing behind her, so she turned around to check just in case. Much to her surprise, there was indeed a person standing behind her, but it wasn't a person. My mom described it as a shadow shaped as a human. My mom is a pretty down-to-earth person, so she thought that she was imagining it. She decided to turn back to her ironing board and ignore it, but as we all know, we as human beings are extremely curious. And of course, so was my mom. She told me that she couldn't help herself but look again. Standing behind her was still this shadow figure. At that point, she knew that it was serious. She immediately went downstairs and, of course, got confronted with the goldfish again. She felt like something more was going on, something that she couldn't explain. My mom decided to call my dad, who was still at work, and he reassured her by saying that he would come home early to be with her. So, my mom picked up my brother from daycare, and when she and my brother came home, my dad was already there. My dad told my mom that he didn't see the shadow figure, although he did indeed see the fish having black spots that he didn't have in the morning. My mom and dad decided to go to the pet store to ask if it's possible for a goldfish to develop these kind of spots. When they arrived and asked the question, the pet store owner laughed at them, saying it's impossible, and that the fish must have had them all of its life as part of its skin pattern and that they hadn't noticed it up until then. Of course, that wasn't the case, but the pet store owner clearly didn't take my parents seriously. Let me say that I googled it in this era, and according to Google, it is in fact possible for a goldfish to develop black spots due to health issues. But that's not what the pet store owner told my parents back in the 90s. So, my parents went home confused. Confused about what was going on with their pet fish, but also about the circumstances. Because why did those black spots appear right before my mom saw the shadow figure? In the next few weeks, my mom would have her next doctor's appointment for her pregnancy. When the appointment came, the doctor told my parents that their baby, me, wasn't completely healthy. In fact, the doctor said that her baby would be born disabled due to spina bifida, a birth defect where a baby's spinal cord and backbone don't form properly in the womb, leaving a gap or opening in the spine. Of course, my parents were shocked and devastated, and further nerve-wracking examinations would follow. Examinations to predict the severity of the defect. After these examinations, my parents were told by the doctors that, although it wouldn't be without a fight, they expected their baby to be able to lead a decent life in the future. This obviously was a blessing in disguise. Fast forward to the day I was born. In June of 1995, on the day that I was born, that miraculous little goldfish died. I was rushed into surgery immediately after I was born to close my spine and to place a cerebral spinal drain in my brain. Many surgeries would follow throughout my early childhood, my teenage years, and my 20s. Still, I would say that the doctors back in 1994 were right about me being able to have a decent life, because I absolutely do. I went to regular schools and colleges, and have always had friends and have never been bullied for my disability. And like I said, I'm 30 years old now, and I've been married for 8 years to a wonderful husband. We have the cutest dog and have created a beautiful home and life together. But back to the story. There is one last thing to add. A little after I was born, my mom met a woman at work who can be described as a medium. I guess my mom and her got in touch about the events that took place while she was pregnant with me, and after I was born. She told her about the goldfish and his black spots, the shadow figure, and that the fish died on the day that I was born. The woman was totally invested in my mom's story, and asked if she could share her thoughts about what could possibly have happened. My mom replied with, "Yes, I absolutely would like to know your perspective on this." What the woman said next left my mom speechless. She said, "I think the shadow figure was your guardian angel, and they visited you to warn you about your baby's health. I think they used the fish as symbolization. The fishbowl represented your womb, the water inside the fishbowl represented your amniotic fluid, and the fish represented your baby. And since the fish suddenly had black spots, it represented that your baby wasn't doing okay. The shadow figure showed itself to make you pay attention to what it was trying to warn you about. When your baby was born, the fish's purpose had been served, so it passed away." At that moment, my mom just knew that this woman was right. It all made sense now. As soon as I was old enough, my mom told me the story about our guardian angel that has protected me and my mom since before I was born. And this story will forever live on in our family. Thank you for reading, Raven. I do have some more unexplainable events that I experienced, and also some that my mom experienced, but those are for another time. I've debated on sharing this story for a while, as it's not very long and not too scary per se. I've never found the story scary, more so just mind-boggling. I've always been a believer in the paranormal. Well, for as long as I can remember, I have been. It may have been kicked off by this experience that I'm about to tell, or it could have been something in my memory that my mind just seems to not want to grasp onto. Either way, I do know that this experience is one of the reasons I truly believe in the paranormal. Let's give some backstory. When I was 8, I was put into the foster care system. It was a rough system, and has caused me severe amounts of trauma over the years. But when I was 9, I was placed with my aunt and uncle, who had adopted my half-sisters, both girls who were about to graduate college. The layout of the house was pretty simple. 3 bedrooms down one hall, and in that hall a bathroom and a laundry room. And that hall exited into the living room, which had one hallway that had a bedroom at the end of the hallway and then a door out into the pool room, and the kitchen was on the opposite side of the living room. The really important part is the hallway with the 3 bedrooms. My bedroom was at the end of the hallway, across from my guardian's bedroom. I was home alone at the time of the event. I can't remember why, but I was walking down the hallway to go to the living room. I have a habit of looking around my surroundings even when I'm alone, so this is what I was doing. Now, the room at the end of the hallway was one of my half-sisters, and the door opened to where you could see an electric piano. It didn't have a chair, as she had switched where the chair would be between the piano and the desk, on the opposite side of the room, hidden from view. What I saw when I glanced into the room was seared into my memory. A woman. I didn't see her face, nor was she wearing anything that could identify her. She had her hands on the piano, had pale skin, and was wearing a light blue dress that went down to her knees. Her feet weren't touching the ground, but they seemed like they were, in a way. They weren't pointed down like how people tend to do when their feet don't touch the ground. Like she was standing on some invisible box. She had brown hair. It wasn't too long, but it wasn't necessarily short either. If I can remember correctly, it was about shoulder length. Now, I definitely didn't see her for long. I was walking past the door and didn't think twice of someone being in the room playing the piano, because that's what my half-sister would be doing. But when it processed in my mind after passing the door, I immediately backed up to look in, trying to see who was in the house. But there was nothing. The room was empty. I've never been diagnosed with any mental disorder that causes hallucinations, and while I have had a slew of other diagnoses, but I knew this couldn't have been a hallucination because I remember it clear as day. And I, as a 9-year-old, had to do a double take. It's not crazy, and the outcome was the fact that I lied about what the ghost woman looked like to try to make her seem more scary, and me more cool to the kids in school as I struggled to make friends. But that lie didn't last for long, and that woman still plagues my mind at random times. Who was she? And why on earth was she in my half-sister's bedroom? I don't live with that family anymore, and that's probably for the better, but I wonder what other happenings I could have witnessed if I had stayed longer than just 3 months. Hi Raven. I'm a huge fan and a big-time listener and often share your channel with friends and family. Thank you. I hope you and Patience are both doing great. You guys are awesome. I'm really excited to share my story with you for the first time. It was midnight in the middle of winter and I was ill and needed painkillers. I was awake, wrapped in a blanket, sitting on the north-facing edge of my extra-large twin-sized bed. Emphasis on the extra large. I was facing the window on the north-facing wall of my room, and my back was turned towards the southern wall. I was waiting for my mom to give me the medicine, because she saw me in pain and didn't want me to suffer all by myself. Behind me, there was a lot of room on the bed, because of how little space I was taking, and how big the bed was. My mom had set down a glass jar that she was carrying in the center of the bed before she went out to get my medication. You know how, when the room is small, the air feels very still? Like even a little bit of movement or disturbance cannot go unnoticed. Now, it's important to understand the layout of my room. My back was facing the south wall, which had 2 doors. On one corner was the door to my room, and on the other corner was the door to my bathroom. I have to emphasize that the doors were on either corner of the wall, and they were not close to each other. Anyway, I heard and felt my mom enter the room, walk past behind me toward the bathroom, and go in. The movement stirred the air in the entire room, so she's gotta go for a quick bathroom break. Cool. A few seconds later, the jar behind me, being at least 18 inches away from any edge of the bed, shattered on the floor. That caught me by surprise. But I reasoned that my mom's clothing might have gotten caught on the jar while she was walking past the bed. But the more I thought about it, the more it didn't make sense. From what I estimate, she must have already been inside the bathroom when the jar shattered behind me. Also, it was way too far from the edge of the bed to simply get caught onto someone's clothing, who might walk past it. But this wasn't the worst part. The worst part was when I turned around to the sound of the jar shattering and saw my mom run into my room asking if I was all right. But then, if she isn't in the bathroom, who just walked past behind me? Before anyone chalks it up to delirium, no, it wasn't. I wasn't sleepy and certainly spent enough time in my room to know how it feels when I'm completely alone there. There was also no wind coming in from anywhere. The only window was shut and in front of me. We never found out who it was that walked past me that night, and that's wonderful. Hi, bro. So I don't know if this is a glitch in the Matrix incident or paranormal, but it was horrifying. It occurred about 13 years ago. I'm Elle, now 43, and I'm Iranian. At this time, I had been married for like 2 months. It was about 2 p.m. in the afternoon, and I was lying on the floor in front of the TV, chilling and watching some movie. I remember my eyes getting heavy and I felt sleepy. Because I had just eaten lunch and it was a pleasant and cool afternoon, it made me want to doze off even more. I must mention that I was alone. My husband was at work at the time. My eyes were closed, and maybe 5 minutes passed, and then I woke up. And in the same state of sleep and wakefulness that I was in, I saw that the entire room and its furniture had been turned like 90 degrees. The room went half dark like the sunset time. Everything was upside down and reversed, and somehow blurred and intertwined. I even remember the furniture as if it had merged into one another, or like fused together. It was horrifying, but I was thinking that, girl, you are dreaming. When I suddenly heard a male voice, like a young man talking from behind me. Consider that I'm still lying on the floor, clear as day, saying, "Don't change the TV channel. I'm still watching the program." I literally froze in fear. I couldn't move even my fingers. I didn't even touch the remote control, let alone change the channels. I really didn't get why the voice was saying that, and I was struggling to manage this in my head. Like, WTF, who is talking? And then suddenly the clear voice that had said that sentence turned into a terrifying demonic voice right next to my left ear, like someone put their mouth right beside my ear and started talking in gibberish. It slowly turns to, At this point, I gathered all my strength because my body was like cookie dough or jelly. I reached out my arm with difficulty, grabbed the DVD player remote, which was on the floor next to my pillow, and threw it in the direction of where the voice was coming from, behind me. In a split second, everything changed back to normal. The room was normal and in order. I was suddenly freed from that state of paralysis and heaviness, and I could hear the TV and the birds chirping out clearly. I was beyond horrified. The next thing I can remember is I grabbed my keys and I ran like hell out of that house, in my pajamas and slippers to my mom's house, which is on the other side of the road. When I got there, I couldn't speak properly out of fear and was trembling like crazy. I'd never experienced sleep paralysis, and I know that I wasn't dreaming or imagining things. I am Muslim, and we believe in some creatures called jinns. These creatures are made of fire according to the Quran and are so fast and quick. They have good ones and some bad and evil ones with bad intentions, like us humans. My mom said that it was a jinn who wanted to scare me or play tricks on me, but I really don't know. To this day, I don't know what I encountered that day. Who the hell talked to me? why my vision was blurry, and why my living room was distorted, as I explained to you. I have no idea. And I never experienced anything similar to that. I try to be skeptical when it comes to paranormal experiences, especially when it's just me experiencing something. My first thought is rarely ghost. I usually lean towards more realistic explanations like the building settling, something was unbalanced and fell, cats getting into stuff, sleep deprivation, etc. But when other people are experiencing the same things, it gets a little harder to brush off. I've recently started a new job as a night auditor at a hotel, and everyone who works here has told me that the hotel is haunted. I initially thought they were just being dramatic until I started to experience things myself. And so I wanted to share some of the experiences that I have had here. I do stay up all night for my position, so I often will still shrug things off as sleep deprivation, even though I'm naturally, basically nocturnal. But these things have been experienced at all hours of the day, and not just by me. The most common experience my coworkers and I have had is the sound of keys jingling in the lobby, like someone is walking from one end of the room to the other, back and forth, right in front of the desk. We've all heard it, whether we were alone or other people were there with us. We've all reported the same thing. No one has seen anyone or anything there while this is happening, and it never happens when someone is in that part of the lobby. And if we come out from behind the desk while we're hearing it, it stops. The other more common one is a tall man with messy hair who stands at the back of the office. The first time I saw it, I said something to my supervisor because I saw an unfamiliar man in the employee area. And he said, "Oh, that's just Mr. Hammond. He died of a heart attack in one of the rooms, in room 218, 6 years ago. We see him around all the time. He won't hurt you." As casually as if she was telling me about a stray cat in the alley. Mr. Hammond has also been seen sitting in the recliner in the lobby if the TV is left on. Sometimes we won't see him, but we will hear a quiet cough coming from that chair, and I could swear he changed the channel while I was walking by one day. There are two people that we see in the lobby gym. A short man in a gray sweatsuit and expensive-looking sneakers, and a tall, thin woman in a tank top with a long ponytail. We've seen the man using the exercise equipment or standing in front of the mirror with what looks to be an iPod and wired headphones, but he never leaves the gym. The woman has been seen using the equipment as well, but she also walks around in the lobby. I've seen her walk from the restroom to the gym without opening the doors, walk down the hallway past the desk, or walk up to the desk like she was a guest asking for something several times. And I've walked around the corner to see her standing there and approached her apologizing for the wait, only for her to disappear when I get close. Once, I even heard her say, "Hey, excuse me," in a bubbly tone, but she was gone a second later. There have also been complaints about the front double doors being haunted, because it will open and close when no one is around. I've always assumed it was an electrical issue or something with the sensor. They replaced the door recently and the new one breaks every other day, and it's always something different. Sometimes it won't open. Sometimes it won't close. One day, one side wouldn't open and the other just opened and closed for an hour straight. I locked it closed and it kept trying to open for so long that I just got used to the little click noise, and I didn't even notice when it finally stopped. One day, the whole left side of the door was just off the track and nobody knows what happened. I still think it's an electrical issue of some kind, and maybe someone ran into it with a luggage cart the day it was off the track and knocked it down or something. But my coworkers still say it's haunted. There is one thing that I have experienced that no one else seems to, so I was hesitant to include it, but I feel like it might be interesting enough to share, even if it's just in my head. One day, while I was still in training, I walked into the staff kitchen and closed the door behind me. I heard a woman's voice singing Unwritten by Natasha Bedingfield. At first, I thought it was the radio in the lobby, and then I realized that the song in the lobby was an older sounding song that I was not familiar with. So I turned around thinking my supervisor, who's my best friend and sings to me all the time, had followed me in, but no one was there. And then I heard a giggle and the same woman's voice say, "Sorry," coming from the same direction. There's no speaker in that room at all, and the fans are so loud that you would not be able to hear it that clearly if there was. I assumed it might be a former employee who I had heard of who died about the same time that I started working there, so I started talking to her every day when I was in the kitchen. And part of me thought I was losing my mind, and part of me was worried that she might be lonely. I didn't hear her voice again for a few weeks, but I always felt like someone was standing in the kitchen with me. One time, my hands were too full to close the ice machine, and when I turned around to put down what I was holding, it closed behind me. And once, when I couldn't find something, a cupboard door opened slightly and what I was looking for was in that cupboard. And those things I could explain away. Maybe the ice machine just wasn't closed all the way and the lid fell. And maybe the fan moved the cupboard door, but there is something I can't explain. I was prepping for breakfast and went to get milk out of the fridge. As I opened the door, I forgot what I was doing and stood there for a few seconds, zoning out, with the fridge door open. And suddenly, I felt like what I could only describe as a fist punching my ear, the impact knocking me sideways. It took me a moment to regain my senses. I was shaken, but I just quickly finished what I needed to do and got out of the kitchen. As I stepped out of the door, I said, "If you're not going to be nice, we're not going to be friends." And as I walked away, I heard the voice say, "Hold on, hello?" And I ignored it and haven't heard it again. I don't really know what to make of that whole situation, but I have no explanation. Every time I go into the kitchen, I look at the fridge door and stand in that position, trying to see if there was any way I could have hit my head, and I can't find anything. My ear felt bruised for a week, and I can't find any reasonable explanation. I don't know if any of this is really paranormal, or just a documentation of my descent into madness. Either way, I hope it was at least interesting, and thank you for reading. Hey Raven, I found your stories over a year ago and they help me sleep, or they just entertain me. Thank you for all your work. Here's my story. It was the first week of summer and my mom was in the shower. Now, I was outside, so my mom was on the other side of my house anyway. I was sitting in a chair in my front yard. My sister had just come out and asked what I was doing. I said I was watching a video that my phone had sent me. She went back inside after I turned it off. She closed the door and did whatever she does. All of a sudden, the door opened and closed, and I thought it was my sister, so I ignored it. But then I heard feet pattering on the floor, and it sounded just like my sister's. I jumped up out of my seat and looked around, but I didn't see her. I called her name and no reply. I went back inside and went to her room, and there she was. Now, you would think she ran outside and snuck back in, but you can't get into the house unless you're unlocking the 2 gates with the key under the mat. I should have mentioned this in the beginning, but we live on a farmland, so our closest neighbor is like 4 miles away. So as soon as this happened, I did some research, and it turns out that a kid died in this house from pneumonia in 1815. This explains the situation with all the toys when I came back from vacation, when I knew that I cleaned them all up, but that's another story. That's what happened. If anyone thinks they know what happened, if this gets on the podcast, let me know. Bye, Raven. Once again, thank you for all you do. So that, my friends, was a collection of some chilling paranormal stories. Always a good time. As you all know, because I say it way too much, paranormal stories are where my channel got its start. My very first, second, I think third video were paranormal stories. I don't know why I started there, other than it just seemed like a good idea. And yeah, it was, because that was how everything began, right? So if we look at how it was going and how it is going and compare the two, I think starting off on paranormal stories was a great idea. Because I'm still going strong with them, right? Almost 6 years later. 6 years in December. Figure that one out. As in, the math is obvious. I started in 2019. What I mean is, figure out how it's already been 6 years. How have I been doing this for 6 years of my life? And yet I'm still loving it. I still enjoy every minute of it. There are seconds here and there where I shake my head or feel stressed or just mentally distressed. But we move on and we move forward and we press the buttons. I don't know what I was trying to say there. Anyway, hopefully y'all enjoyed this collection of paranormal stories. If you did, please do hit that like button. That'd be tremendous of you to do. If you're new to the channel and liked what you heard and want more scary, chilling, and strange stories, please consider subscribing. You can also leave me a comment with your thoughts if you've ever had a paranormal experience. And if you want to share that experience with the channel, go to astheravendreams.com, and there's a big button to submit your story. On that website, you can also find all my social media platforms, as well as the other platforms to listen to the podcast in longer formats. You can also reach out to me at astheravendreams@gmail.com if you have something you want to say, or you can send your story in that way too, that's fine. You can sign up for Patreon or memberships, join button down below the video, to get early access to content like this and other things, depending on how you sign up and what you sign up for. Alright. I think it's about everything. If I missed something, let me know. Anyways, hope you're having a great week. Hope I see you again here very soon. But until then, remember that you are loved, you are valid, and you are important. And the world is a much better place with you in it, my friend. Much love, and sleep well.